We've gone leaps and bounds in all facets of single-player and multiplayer experiences. Popular titles like Apex Legends, Valorant, League, CSGO and many others are at the forefront of the esports world. But in the 2000s, we didn't exactly have the coverage that esports allows, and PC gaming was nowhere near as accessible. But in a way, it was also much simpler. This isn't exactly a boomer rant on why the classics are so much better, but more or less just me speaking out loud on how much I appreciated this era in gaming, when the progression of skill came down to just personal enjoyment and the desire to get better, rather than the pursuit of the next cosmetic or the next rank in the ladder. All the classic multiplayer experiences like Counter-Strike, Urban Terror, Unreal Tournament, Quake, and even the likes of StarCraft and Warcraft 3 were the product of a time where the experience took priority, and not necessarily its features or meeting diversity quotas. Gamers worried more about upgrading their CPUs, making time for LAN events, and getting friends together for split-screen sessions and just having a good time in general. I remember a time when my brother's friends would come over and we'd spend the whole night doing energy sword fights in Halo 2 on the map Lockout, and to be honest, we do still have those memories, and we could still create new ones, and we have all of those luxuries from before and today, but nowadays it's just there. This was inevitable though. The magic in all things eventually seeps away, and we move on to the next shiny thing as we have always done. CSGO is the main FPS esport in North America. Now it's Valorant, a relatively young game that took the scene by storm, and even some of the CSGO legends of the North American competitive scene have migrated to Valorant. For a time, StarCraft 2 was the big esports game in the 2010s, but it didn't take long for League of Legends and Dota 2 to come swinging, forever cementing their position in the scene as the two strategy giants. I myself play a few of these games, CSGO and Valorant in particular when the mood swings, and I used to grow up with 1.6 and Source, and I have a lot of fond memories with them both. But they're not necessarily my favourite style of shooters per se, even though they're really good. For me personally, it would go to the movement-based shooters of games like Ultra Kill, Doom Eternal and Quake, as well as Doom 2016. And in the 2000s, we had plenty of Quake-alikes, even free ones as a matter of fact. Some of these games I'm showing now are free and moddable, which is something you don't see often in multiplayer gaming, especially in the shooter department. They have gone on in years, as you can tell, since these were more or less early 3D passion projects, utilizing earlier 3D engines, and some even using the engine that Quake 3 uses, like Urban Terror. So, with this whole video, why exactly was it simpler? When did things get complicated down the track? Well, it's hard to narrow it down to a single answer because there are many out there. There are many plausible theories as to how the gaming industry changed to what we know it as today. Things were simpler because companies were more concerned about the quality of the game, and that if it worked out, great. If not, then it would still be recognized as another step towards the eventual evolution of the scene, and other companies would follow and make a better example. Also, the communities were smaller, but more crowdfunding efforts were made to establish LAN parties and local tournaments, because we didn't have the backing of esports organizations with millions of dollars under their belt. Many scenes have died out over the years, but a lot of the earliest multiplayer games in the 90s and 2000s were regarded so well for their time because the gaming demographic was more niche, so quality control needed more consideration among developers and publishers. And it paid off really well, giving us the first three Halos, Quake 3, Unreal Tournament 99 and 04, StarCraft Brood War, Warcraft 3, Call of Duty 4 and Modern Warfare 2, and so many amazing multiplayer games that came out of the woodwork at this time. But it wasn't like we didn't want the gaming world to be recognised at the time either. We wanted the same respect as the movie and the music industry. And eventually, we got it. But only because we started making more money than the both of them combined. I suppose it's foolish to believe in this notion that in the earlier days, the gaming companies were more noble. They cared more about the player experience rather than the profit margins going up. But in truth, the trends that many people have spoken out against could have came to be in the 2000s. The companies just didn't think of it at the time. And thanks to that, things were simpler. The complications came when the industry started to expand. More demographics started to acknowledge gaming as a legitimate medium, and in effect, wanted to be a part of it. The gaming industry and the community were smaller at this time. The PC gaming community was smaller, but both were on the rise. But at this time, it felt more special because it wasn't just for everyone like it is today. Which isn't a bad thing, by the way, just to be clear. I'm glad that it's more accepted by other demographics. But like I said, things were simpler. The multiplayer games we had weren't trying to please everyone, and they weren't trying to appease to other people either. They were made for the enjoyment of making it, nothing more. And if the game wasn't for you, too bad. Nowadays we have all sorts of options. I guess there's not much of a point to all of this whole video, other than me deciding to talk out loud about an amazing period in gaming that's gone. And if I'm being honest about this, it's not a bad thing. No matter how good something used to be, eventually it runs out of steam, and as a result we get sick of it. In the arena shooter department, we've had a good number of releases that tried to resurrect the scene over the years, but they all failed. Even Quake Champions, the latest installment in the series. It failed not just because of its low numbers, but there were also other reasons as to why. Which is a shame because it is actually a really good game. And if you took away the whole hero system that was implemented, at its core, it's basically just Quake 3 with a coat of paint. As the multiplayer and esports scene exists today, it can't be ignored anymore by other industries. Back in the 2000s, other people had deemed hardcore gaming, or just gaming in general, as something for losers and nerds who had no social life. And now, ironically, those same losers and nerds are now the socialites of the 2010s and the 2020s, the rock stars of the internet age. Now, everyone wants a go at it. Everyone wants a place in the gaming scene. They want the Twitch money, to make millions while streaming, and to be fair, who wouldn't want that opportunity? But there was a time where we didn't have to worry about any of that. Looking back, I don't think it was any better, mind you. It was just simpler times, that's all. Where gaming was just something, we could do to just relax, take our minds off for the day. But now, it's just seen as another way of living. Or to make a living, mind you. Do I want things to go back to the way they were? Not at all. Not really. The industry today isn't perfect, mind you, and to be honest, it never has been. But it's bigger than it was back then, and that's a good thing. And thanks to the indie scene, there will always be a market for nostalgic trips, especially when nothing in the AAA department sparks any interest. Today, we have a harmony that didn't exist before. The games we enjoyed back in the 90s and 2000s were often at the mercy of new and upcoming experiences. For a long time we had Quake, and then Halo came around. For a time we had Halo, then came Call of Duty, even though I love the series. For a time we had StarCraft and even StarCraft 2 be popular for a while. Then League of Legends and Dota 2 came around, you get the idea. But now, we all have a market for something, no matter how big or small. People get to enjoy their Battle Royale experience, I get to enjoy my Doom Eternal and Quake sessions. People get to enjoy more slower but tactical games like Valorant and CSGO, even though I play them as well. I get to enjoy the verticality and complex movements of Ultra Kill afterwards. The 2000s era of multiplayer shouldn't be forgotten, and should be preserved at all costs, so that we can remember a simpler, purer era of online play. Thank you for watching.